NBA teams are constantly striving to get better, acquire assets, and manage their contracts through trades with other teams. No team ever makes a trade with the intention or knowledge that it will be bad, but over the years, many trades have turned out to be horrendous for certain franchises. Some trades are small and are just a second round pick for a deep bench player, and these kinds of trades have little to no impact. But when teams trade their stars, such as when the Clippers traded Blake Griffin and the Sacramento Kings traded DeMarcus Cousins, one team will usually end up clearly winning or losing the trade. Some of these trades are far worse than others, and this video will cover 7 of the worst NBA trades to ever occur. These are not in any order, and they cover a wide span of eras and players. And just remember, it is only my opinion. And let's start things off with the infamous trade of one of the best young shooting guards at the time and the league's current frontrunner for the MVP, James Harden. This was an incredibly contentious trade at the time, as the Thunder had just made the NBA Finals with their young core of Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, and James Harden. And many thought they would dominate the league for years to come, alongside LeBron James and his big three in Miami. But James Harden's rookie deal only had 1 year left, and the Thunder were trying to negotiate a contract extension so they wouldn't have to pay the luxury tax. Harden wanted slightly more money, and the Thunder ownership decided that one of Ibaka or Harden must be traded to avoid paying the luxury tax. As a result, Harden was traded to the Houston Rockets for Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, a second round pick, and 2 first round picks that would become Steven Adams and Mitch McGary. Kevin Martin would play decently in his one OK season before leaving, and Jeremy Lamb never developed in OKC, and Mitch McGary was out of the league almost as soon as he came in. Steven Adams has turned into an incredibly valuable player for the Thunder, and they are still a great team now, but one has to wonder what could have been had Westbrook, Durant, and Harden stayed together. Harden would eventually have joined the starting lineup and would have been near impossible to stop the 3 talented scorers from getting buckets and winning championships. Maybe Durant never leaves for the Warriors, maybe none of them win an MVP, but I think the franchise of OKC would have been a lot better off had they never have traded their young 6th man of the year. And in an incredibly cruel twist of fate, the salary cap made enough jumps that the extra $3 million a year that Harden wanted would have only cost the Thunder $1 million in luxury tax. A lesson that you shouldn't fight too much over small amounts of money when it comes to young stars. If the owners could go back in time, I'm sure that they would open their wallets. The next trade on this list is perhaps the worst NBA trade of all time. It absolutely ruined one franchise for multiple years and helped the Boston Celtics transition from one era of greatness into another. Yes, I'm talking about the infamous Brooklyn Nets and Boston Celtics trade. In this trade, the Nets received incredibly old NBA champions Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, and the throw-in of DJ White. Whilst the Boston Celtics took on the contract of Jared Wallace and received Chris Humphries, Marshawn Brooks, Chris Joseph, and Keith Bogans. That doesn't sound so bad, right? That is until you throw in the fact that Boston received 3 unprotected first-round picks in 2014, 2016, and 2018, as well as the right to swap picks in 2017. The Nets did the opposite of the Thunder. They opened their wallet and assets too much, going into the tax and mortgaging their future for some old NBA stars who were well past it. And we all know how this trade turned out. All 3 star players left the Nets, they never made a strong playoff run, Deron Williams became a shell of himself, and Brook Lopez couldn't carry the team by himself. And they have now been one of the worst teams in the league for the past 3 seasons. And Boston have used the assets they received wonderfully, taking James Young in 2014, who didn't pan out, and then taking Jaylen Brown in 2016, who looks to be a very athletic and talented offensive and defensive prospect. Then, in 2017, they flipped the number 1 pick from Brooklyn for Jason Tatum and a future top pick from either the Lakers or the Kings next year. And then, to top it all off, they packaged the 2018 draft pick in the trade to get Kyrie Irving. So in essence, the Celtics traded Paul Pierce, KG, and Jason Terry for the future of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Kyrie Irving, and another top 5 or 10 draft pick in the future. An incredible return for aging stars who had already won the City of Boston a championship, and this trade earned Danny Ainge a reputation of being someone to be wary of trading with. The next trade also features the Celtics, but instead of being in the current NBA landscape, this trade is from the very beginnings of the NBA in 1956. Yes, the trade that Danny Ainge's mentor, Red Auerbach, pulled off to land Bill Russell at the Celtics. Bill Russell was lauded as the best prospect in the 1956 NBA draft. A freak of an athlete who could defend, pass, rebound and score, Red viewed him as the man to lead the Celtics for years to come. The Rochester Royals had the first pick in the draft and were rumoured to be looking heavily at Russell in order to solidify their centre position. Auerbach offered to send an ice skating performance known as the Ice Capades to Rochester if they would not take Russell with the first pick. Whilst players in the second round are sometimes traded for cash considerations in the modern NBA, it is almost impossible to imagine a team passing on LeBron James or Anthony Davis for an ice skating show. Then, Red traded star center Ed Macauley and their prospect Cliff Hagan to the St. Louis Hawks for the second pick in the draft and took Bill Russell. Cliff Hagan would go into the All-Star game 5 times and helped the Hawks win a championship in 1958, but Ed would only play 3 more seasons before retiring. And Bill Russell would go on to win 11 NBA titles, 5 MVPs, go to the All-Star game 12 times, and is widely considered one of the best players ever, the best defender ever, and one of the greatest winners in team sports history. And the St. Louis Hawks could have had him had they been willing to pay a $25,000 signing bonus and not fallen for the great tricks of Red Auerbach. In 2006, the Chicago Bulls had the second overall pick in the draft and would end up taking LaMarcus Aldridge, a player widely considered to be one of the best power forward prospects in a long time, and someone that would develop into a multiple-time All-Star and huge scoring threat. But the Bulls decided it would be better to trade him for the athletic prospect Tyrus Thomas, who had been taken 4th in the draft, and a role player from Russia who had only averaged 5 points a game. Victor would leave the NBA after just 1.5 unsuccessful seasons with the Bulls, and Tyrus Thomas would only ever amount to a defensive athletic role player in the NBA. Whilst LaMarcus Aldridge would go on to become a multiple-time All-Star, a regular 20 and 10 threat, and one of the more dominant offensive big men the league has seen this decade. He helped the Blazers to their first playoff series win in ages when they beat the Rockets behind his back-to-back 40-point nights, and is now starring for the San Antonio Spurs. No one really knows why the Bulls drafted Aldridge and then essentially traded him for the 4th pick straight away. If they were truly so high on Thomas, why not just take him? It truly remains one of the most baffling and worst trades in the history of the league. Then, in 1992, Charles Barkley was just 28 years old and was off to play in the Dream Team Olympics, had been an All-Star for 6 straight years, and had been named to the All-NBA first or second team for 7 straight seasons. Yet in a bizarre move, he was traded to the Phoenix Suns for Jeff Hornacek, Tim Perry, and Andrew Lang. In the following 1993 NBA season with the Phoenix Suns, Charles Barkley would average 25.6 points on 52% shooting, 12.2 rebounds, and a career-high 5.1 assists per game, leading the Suns to an NBA best 62-20 record. Plus, he would lead the Suns to the NBA Finals for the first time in 17 years and won the NBA MVP award. Despite them losing in the finals, Barkley would spend 4 great years with the Suns and help them to some of the most successful seasons yet. And Jeff Hornacek would only spend 2 years with the 76ers, Andrew Lang would only spend 1, and Tim Perry was an average NBA player at his best. The 76ers essentially got nothing in return for their star and fell into 6 years of terrible play, in a move that must haunt all of their fans to this very day. Lesson learned: you simply don't trade the best player at his position in the entire league, or an all-time great at that. Then, we have the trade of Chris Webber. Chris Webber was one of the best young players in the entire league in his 4 seasons with Washington. In his last season with them, he averaged 22 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and almost 2 steals and 2 blocks a game. He was seen as one of the best building blocks in the league for years to come. So for some bizarre reason, Washington decided to trade him for the 36-year-old Otis Thorpe and the 33-year-old Mitch Richmond. Both had been good players in their primes, and Richmond had been one of the better scorers in the league during his time in Sacramento. But both players would decline quickly and never produce anything significant for the Washington Bullets. Meanwhile, Chris Webber would play 7 fantastic seasons for the Sacramento Kings, including the 2002 playoffs, where many believe that the Kings were robbed of winning the series against the Lakers and should have won the NBA championship. The Sacramento teams with Webber, Divac and co. were some of the best passing teams the NBA has ever seen, and are considered to be the golden era of the Sacramento Kings franchise. A golden era that could have been Washington's, if they weren't obsessed with trading young superstars for old, washed-up NBA X-stars. And for the last and 7th trade on this list, I might be jumping the gun a little bit, and I debated including this trade, but I think that Cleveland trading Kyrie Irving to Boston this past summer is one of the worst moves in a long time. The entire trade was apparently organised without LeBron James's knowledge, and this has apparently caused a great amount of frustration in the Kings camp. It could very well be a huge factor in LeBron leaving this offseason, as well as costing the Cavaliers a chance to win a title this year. They received Ante Zizic, Jay Crowder, Isaiah Thomas, and the Brooklyn Nets pick for Kyrie Irving. At the time, many considered it to be a fair deal, and thought that IT and Crowder could help the Cavaliers contend this season, and that the Brooklyn Nets pick could be used to get another great player in a trade, or draft in the top 5 this season. But it appears that Danny Ainge has once again fleeced another front office. It appears that players simply play better under Brad Stevens and struggle to replicate that production after they leave Boston, making them worth less than other teams perceive them to be. Thomas has struggled in Cleveland, as has Jay Crowder, who hasn't shot as well or defended nearly as well as he did in Boston. Plus, the Brooklyn pick looks more likely to be in the 8 to 10 range than in the top 5 this draft, and it's worth less than expected as a result. Thomas will most likely leave the Cavaliers this season, and so could LeBron, which would leave the Cavaliers devoid of talent outside of Kevin Love and the Brooklyn Nets pick, which will likely be too low to acquire a sure-thing star draft pick. Meanwhile, Boston acquired one of the best young point guards in the league, who is still only 26 and has another year on his deal, and all signs point to him re-signing with Boston once it's up. It might be too early to tell, but I think in 2 years, we will see that this trade deserved to be on this list, amongst the worst trades of all time. And that concludes my opinion and video on the 7 worst trades in NBA history. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe for NBA videos every Thursday and Sunday, and leave a comment below with other bad trades and what you think of the above mentioned trades.